Dr. Mohammed. Yeah. First question is in French. Okay. No.
How's that? Good? Okay.
Morning, it's Janet again. We're about a minute out on my estimate, and we'll be right